Michael Schaefer, Ross Johnson, Matt Schultz, and Landon Fry are all here.
It's free.
Perspective. I've been back and
I'm just gonna say it. I've been thinking it for 10 minutes. I don't want a podcast scared.
Oh yeah.
ashes. Now I've seen the road.
Pregnancy is a beautiful thing. Pregnancy is a gift.
Oh, there are stories to tell.
What kind of paint sticks to asteroids? Like, if you don't time your wall.
Afraid some days, but the road will lead us to a better place.
We are called to emerge from that default setting of self-involvement.
Okay, who we got on this call?
All right. One of my friends from Springfield, he comes to my men's nights. He's actually very good friends with Anne Marie's husband. You ready for the numbers?
Here we go.
Springfield Mike Schaefer. Yeah, like when you meet him, he just has a certain
flavor.
All right.
Okay. 217.
741.
21741. Who gives out digits like that?
7741.
Oh, 741. What is this, Japan? Okay, what's this guy's name?
His name is Josh. Should I do it, or are you just going to take over, you think?
You do your best.
All right, I'll do my best. Mike's going to jump in 8 seconds into the call. Oh. Josh.
Hello.
Welcome to the speech,
How
guys.
you doing, man?
Very good. How you doing tonight?
Above average, below great, but we'll go with it, right?
We'll take it right there. You are, I want to welcome you to the speech, guys.
Awesome. Thank you, man. I am pleased to be here with Ross and the other guys whose names I don't need to know because you're not as cool as Ross.
Yep, that's fair.
You
We
will
might
need
not
to
be
know
as
their
cool.
introduction, though.
We might not be as cool, Josh, but we're definitely taller.
It's all right, man. It's all right.
Josh,
It
this
took
is-
2 episodes. Of season.
This is Mike, the eldest of the speech guys.
Are you old enough to remember the Cold War as a first-person individual?
Yeah, I fought in it. I played Rocky's son in Rocky 4, so that's how I contributed.
Okay. Did you survive the Oregon Trail?
Survived it. I built it.
You built You're the one to blame for the dysentery.
Yeah. Josh, what do you do in Springfield other than harass Ross?
Well, a little bit here and there. I work my job to pay my bills, and beyond that, I try to live a hermetical life. And
Ross tells me you listened to one of our episodes. Which one did you have the privilege of listening to?
well, I listened to, excuse me here. I listened to part of the motherhood one. There's another one I listened to right here a while back, but I cannot draw it to mind. So I'm sorry that I can't answer those questions for you. But I do know the quality is outstanding. I do remember that.
Hey, as long as you clicked play, we'll take it.
As long as you click play for at least 5 seconds, because that counts as a listen. Anything less was a waste.
You don't even have to have the volume on, I don't think.
No, I'm one of those guys. If it's either I listen to a little bit of it, I'm like, nah, or I listen all the way through because like I've invested that much time in it, I might as well go the whole yard, right?
What other podcasts are you listening to these days, Josh?
I generally don't listen to podcasts, ironically enough. I usually listen to radio. I'm old school.
What do you listen to on the radio? There's only 2 stations that matter.
Well, I ironically enough, in my mature adulthood, I've listened to more of the Catholic radio station in town because I desire to educate myself in my faith so I can faithfully participate in it and defend the doctrines. Beyond that, really nothing much anymore. I really got disenchanted with rock stations after a while, but yeah. So
Yeah.
Well, You can add KMOX 1120 AM to that mix, and your life will improve several percentage points.
Okay. If this is AM, it sounds much more legit. Because I mean, like FM, it's got the quality, it's got the sound, but like the AM, it's like you're in radio because you want to be in radio, not because you're looking for a job.
Yeah, well said.
You have some good competition here, but your task is relatively simple. You need to introduce that this is season 4 of the Speech Guys, that we are doing the episode titled, I don't know, what's the title of the episode?
All right.
Hold on. Josh, Ross is shortchanging you because he thinks you can't deliver. We like to get a little bit of razzle-dazzle, if you will, a little bling-bling, a little cheddar cheese from our podcast introducers. What do you know about Good Will Hunting? What do you know about Robin Williams? What do you know about Matt Damon and Ben Affleck and his little brother Casey in this film?
Well, as far as the latter three are concerned, they're all from Boston, so they don't like to use the rhotic accent of the English language. They like to diminish that R where it belongs and put an R where it doesn't. As far as Robin Williams, he was a comedian who tragically suffered with issues over the course of his life, but I think he contributed to society just the same. As far as the speech itself, if you want my opinion on that, I'll give you my opinion on the speech.
Yeah, what do you got?
Okay, so my take from the speech is that it is a speech articulating how experience trumps book learning. They're talking about how if you really want to learn about somebody else, you have to be vulnerable yourself to learn, right?
Have you ever had the flavor of speech that Doc gives Matt Damon there in your life? Some man who's sort of transferring himself from middle age to later years with a beard who's just needs to sort of lay you down because you mocked his art and then smoked into it. Have you ever been in that position before?
I'm basically living Robin Williams' part right now, like the middle-aged man, like telling the younger folks what they need to do.
Oh, okay.
So as far as on the other end of it, though, as far as learning what Matt Damon's learning, if you will, I've had the fortunate experience of learning from good people. Thanks God, gently, because we can always learn roughly in life, right? Like the hard thump that gets at the bottom of the well. But no, it's
wait, what's at the bottom of the well?
Like a hard thump, man. If you hit the bottom of the well, or at the bottom of the cliff, or whatever, the rough way of learning. Learning life the hard way.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm using my colloquialisms here. I apologize.
Yeah, I'm behind on my well references.
I'll blame it on my mom being from Texas. We'll go with that.
Okay.
No, so at any rate, no, it's fortunate when you have guiding lights in your life that be it somebody you know or somebody you don't know, somebody who takes notice and even if it's not the most pleasant or comfortable thing, that they steer you the right direction. Because I'd rather have one moment of awkwardness and uncomfortable conversation than really geek things up later in my life, right?
Would you say that choking the individual you have in therapy or counseling is sometimes necessary?
Are you related to this person?
Is that rhetorical, or is that something to consider before you choke them?
It really depends on the relationship.
Okay, so you're saying it's an option.
Yeah. Well, it's I don't know what the customary practices of the land are. It could be very cultural, right?
Now you sound like a lawyer on this side, Josh. Maybe, sort of. Same.
Oh, and that's why I am not. So
little this, little that.
Yeah.
Okay, hey, Josh, why don't you let us do the podcasting then? Why don't you introduce us?
All right. This is season 4 of the Speech Guys podcast. You have Mike, Landon, and the wonderful Ross, and the episode is of the park bench speech from Good Will Hunting. Please enjoy and let these guys dissect it.
The park bench speech. Well said.
Yeah, that was good.
You got the title.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you, Josh. You did great.
All right, see you, bud.
All right, take care, guys.
Michael Schaefer, Ross Johnson, Matt Schultz, and Landon Fry are all here. It's free.
I've been back and
I'm just gonna say it. I've been thinking it for 10 minutes. I don't want a podcast scared.
Oh yeah.
ashes. Now I've seen the road.
Pregnancy is a beautiful thing. Pregnancy is a gift.
Shit. Oh, there are stories to tell.
Enough to
What
get
kind
it
of paint sticks
done
to
off.
asteroids? Like, if you don't time your wall.
Afraid some days, but the road will lead us to a better place.
We are called to emerge from that default setting of self-involvement.
Okay, hell of a delivery by Josh. Just like he's been introducing podcasts since the Cold War. Maybe before that. Ross, what do we got on the docket tonight?
All right, so tonight we are on episode 2 of Oscar-nominated films.
No, we're not a movie podcast. Speeches from Oscar-nominated movies.
Speeches from Oscar-nominated
Yes.
movies.
Yeah.
So episode 2.
Got
so
it right.
we're gonna dive into Good Will Hunting. So I think before we really do anything, should we just listen to the speech?
Yeah, we're calling this the park bench speech. Do you want to set up when the speech occurs in the film?
For anybody that has not seen Good Will Hunting, you have Matt Damon, who plays a character who's a young man that's kind of a math prodigy, but doesn't come from a good social situation. So he's an orphan, been in and out of a lot of trouble, been arrested a lot, working just a low-paying blue-collar job, but he's just math absolute genius. So the math professor at MIT discovers him, wants to give him this opportunity to use his skills, but he has to agree to see a counselor because of his arrest issues. So we're sitting on a park bench. Robin Williams is a counselor, might be a psychologist, I'm not exactly sure. But his task has been to help Matt Damon. Matt Damon has kind of just made a joke of everything so far. So Robin Williams is kind of the first person to start peeling back the layers of Matt Damon a little bit to expose, expose his weaknesses.
Okay, let's take a listen.
So what's this? The Taster's Choice moment between guys? This is really nice. You got a thing for swans? Is this like a fetish? It's something like maybe we need to devote some time to? Thought about what you said to me the other day about my painting. Stayed up half the night thinking about it. Something occurred to me. I fell into a deep, peaceful sleep and haven't thought about you since. You know what occurred to me? Oh, you're just a kid. You don't have the faintest idea what you're talking about. Why, thank you. It's all right. You've never been out of Boston. Nope. So if I asked you about art, you'd probably give me the skinny on every art book ever written. Michelangelo. Know a lot about him. Life's work, political aspirations, him and the Pope, sexual orientation, the whole works, right? I bet you can't tell me what it smells like in the Sistine Chapel. You've never actually stood there and looked up at that beautiful ceiling. Seen that. If I ask you about women, you'd probably give me a syllabus of your personal favorites. You may have even been laid a few times. But you can't tell me what it feels like to wake up next to a woman and feel truly happy. You're a tough kid. I ask you about war, you'd probably throw Shakespeare at me, right? Once more into the breach, dear friends. But you've never been near one. You've never held your best friend's head in your lap. Watch him gasp his last breath, looking to you for help. I ask you about love. Probably quote me a sonnet. But you've never looked at a woman and been totally vulnerable. Known someone that could level you with her eyes. Feeling like God put an angel on earth just for you. Who could rescue you from the depths of hell. And you wouldn't know what it's like to be her angel. To have that love for her be there forever. Through anything. Through cancer. And you would know about sleeping sitting up in a hospital room for 2 months, holding her hand, because the doctors could see in your eyes that the terms visiting hours don't apply to you. You don't know about real loss, because that only occurs when you love something more than you love yourself. I doubt you've ever dared to love anybody that much. I look at you, I don't see an intelligent, confident man. I see a cocky, scared, kid. But you're a genius, Will. No one denies that. No one could possibly understand the depths of you. But you presume to know everything about me because you saw a painting of mine. You ripped my life apart. You're an orphan, right? Do you think I'd know the first thing about how hard your life has been? How you feel? Who you are? Because I read Oliver Twist? Does that encapsulate you? Personally, I don't give a about all that, because you know what? I can't learn anything from you. I can't read in some book. Unless you want to talk about you, who you are. Then I'm fascinated. I'm in. But you don't want to do that, do you, sport? You're terrified of what you might say. Your move, Chief.
Do you think a scene of his friend dying in his lap in war was a deleted scene from Good Morning Vietnam, and this is actually a sequel to Good Morning Vietnam?
Ooh, I love crossing the actor chasms of their other works. I feel like there's another one with Good Will Hunting, but I don't know what it is.
I think it's Ben Affleck becomes an oil driller and flies to destroy an asteroid.
And Matt Damon is still the hated man in every movie because he's a genius no one likes.
And then Matt Damon had to out because he saw like, hey, Ben went to space, so now I'm gonna go to space too, and that's how he ended up on the planet in the other galaxy.
Right, in Interstellar, he was the genius sent on the Lazarus missions.
Yeah,
but yeah.
So we have Good Morning Vietnam, we have Armageddon, Good Will Hunting, and Interstellar are all in the same
multiverse universe.
Same universe.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's funny.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, the park bench speech, reason I chose the speech, I'd actually never seen Good Will Hunting.
Wow. Until like this topic.
Yeah, until this topic. So
well, that's lovely.
I'm looking through Oscar-nominated movies, and that one kind of jumped out. I think I maybe found this speech, and I liked it, and obviously the movie's like really well acclaimed, and I kind of wanted to watch it. So I'd never seen the movie before. First takes, I actually really liked the movie. It was good. I enjoyed it. Me and Julie watched it one evening. Nice. I really like the speech. I kind of like the speech because, I mean, it fits like so well in the movie, and it's kind of this really important crux point for the Matt Damon character. But I just kind of like that I feel like you could draw, I mean, understanding the movie helps a lot, but I feel like there's a lot of stuff in that speech that, I mean, you could not see the movie and still, I feel like, gain a lot or have a lot of conversation topics just from the speech itself. First reactions from you guys?
Mike, when did you first see it?
It was not super long time ago, sometime in the past 6 years, I would say. And I've probably I did rewatch it this past week. And I've probably seen it. This was probably like the third or fourth time I'd seen it in the past 6 years. What's stuck out to me, well, in this observation emerged in two layers. So, the speech opens. This is the second time that Robin's character and Matt's character are talking and meeting, because the first instance was a week before, a few days before, whatever, and Matt goes into Robin's office and he's engaging with him as a therapist in the same way he engaged these other therapists, right? I'm going to find a way to break you, right? But in this very intelligent, sophist sort of way. And Robin Williams, instead of taking the bait, right? He's going jab for jab. I love the one line where they start talking about weightlifting and Matt Damon asks how much he can bench press. And he says 285, which I'm really curious if Robin Williams could bench that. It looks feasible.
I mean,
his forearms look pretty good to try to choke.
Yeah.
When he choked Matt Damon, his forearm was pretty bulging.
Yeah.
But Matt didn't answer.
And then, yeah, exactly. He obviously could bench 185 on a good day, maybe. And then Matt Damon finds a new thing. And he finds this little piece of art that looks homemade or something. It's this sort of impressionist style little, fishing boat type thing floating. And he basically starts crapping on it and says it's no good. And Robin Williams just acts like he doesn't care. And then obviously Robin Williams chokes him because of him disgracing the memory of his wife. But this speech, of course, opens with referencing him crapping on his art, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
What's the same about the other therapists he saw is that Matt Damon mocked each of them, and those therapists, they chose not to tolerate it. And so they're like, I'm not going to work with this guy. And Robin Williams was set apart because even though he was offended, he saw Matt Damon's character's brokenness, right? The fact that he said those things because he's a kid, but you can say because he's affected by sin, like all of us. And like that was the first step, having compassion on him, where Robin Williams could start really working with him, engaging him, right? And that stuck out to me because there's a lot of relevance to that, as we've talked before in the podcast about my story writing with Mel and Grady and a couple of other things going on. There will be people who don't receive your art the way that you want them to, right? Either it's ignored or they're sort of dismissive about it. And it'd be very easy, like these other therapists, to just want to kind of put up a certain wall in those relationships, or just put up a certain arm's length there. But instead, I think Robin Williams' character models as well, seeing those individuals with compassion, like they're broken people, just like me. I've let people down in presumably similar ways because of my sin. And that compassion, like, allows that intimacy to persist despite being hurt. I know there's a lot for a first reaction, but it was just on my mind, and it was my first. This was my first reaction.
My first reaction, I'd circle, like, I probably saw this 10 years ago, definitely post college. Never seen it before then. I don't know what put it in front of us. I'd credit Logan. I believe Logan was like, oh, you've got to see that movie. I would say, let's call it 24-year-old Landon. This movie would be like represent the entirety of my knowledge of modern therapy and like what it is. I wouldn't have any other reference points besides like, oh, that's like what is in Good Will Hunting. So I think just the introduction to psychology and therapy and probably seen it, somewhere between the 4 and 6 times since, given it is a good watch, and I'm more of a repeat movie watcher than a new every single time I sit down movie watcher. Mike, on your point of how Robin or Sean's character was different than the other therapists, I think one thing to add there would be Matt/Will picked him apart, tried to break him down, and did break him down, but Sean was willing to like completely be vulnerable himself to Will back through the process. Not right off the bat, like he had to get Will to talk first and like get him going a little bit, but at the points where it was like, here's me, what about you? Sean was always like, lay it out. Like in the end discovered like both of their fathers beat him, and like was willing to walk and share with him throughout the entire process, which I don't think the other therapists were. It was mostly a one-way dialogue. And that's where like even Sean teaching his class of the community college students was like, you know, how do you gain trust with your patients? And that question wasn't answered in the community college class scene, but that was clearly the way he did it, was to offer himself.
Yeah, I think briefly there is a good modeling there in their interactions. You say vulnerability. I mean, you could say tenderness in his teaching, his formation, counseling, whatever.
Yeah, choking your patient, like just so it's that tender, loving touch.
Well, hold on, but which our world obviously emphasizes that aspect a lot, which is good and important. But yeah, like you're saying, I mean, choking maybe too far. Josh is unsure, maybe if you're related.
If your therapist isn't willing to chokehold you to get a point across, like you're really not going deep enough.
But he does, but on the similar vein, he does call him a cocky kid. Point is, like, he's coming from both directions. He's being appropriately harsh with him, but also tender at the same time, which is, I think probably if you saw the other counselors' long-term counseling careers, they would probably lack that appropriate harshness. And again, it's modeling a certain style of teaching that might be lacking in the modernity.
Or reality, like modernity. I would lean towards modernity, but
I was thinking the word just authentic, but it seemed like, at least in the movie, like therapist seems like they were trying to approach it as, not above, but trying to teach him or help him. He's this project that they have, as opposed to Robin Williams was the person. And I mean, to kind of like Mike had said a little bit, like this idea that compassion, like he actually approached him as a person, to kind of what both of you guys had said. I mean, I think that's kind of, in any relationship, just seems required, like, or like that you have to. In the movie, Matt Damon was just smarter than everyone else. So when someone tried to be his teacher, he was just smarter than everybody else, so he could control the situation, get the outcome that he wanted. But Robin Williams was the first person who actually viewed him as a person, not this thing that they had studied, which was the one area that Matt Damon was not comfortable in. And so, I thought like this, the fact that his reaction wasn't even like, it was just so not blank, like, but just so, he didn't fight back. He didn't cry. He just was just almost shocked that had happened.
Might one say that in this speech, Sean, as Landon reminded us the character's name is, that Sean portrays and communicates the distinction between book knowledge and experiential knowledge and that significance.
Yeah, I wasn't quite ready to go there yet, but yeah.
Are you sure? Oh, did you want to go somewhere else? It felt like a natural digression.
So yeah, let's just go there. I mean, yeah, I thought there. What were you going with there, Mike? Why did what we said trigger that thought?
I mean, between the other counselors and between like the content of the speech itself, right? Because the biggest chunk of Sean's speech is this casting of these different aspects of life: love and art and war, other things, but you get the idea, right? And within each of these domains, he says, Will, this is what you would say that war is, or love is, or art is. And obviously what Will was going to say, as we've already seen in other scenes, he's going to deliver some about something that he read in a book. Obviously what Sean eventually gets to later on is like, well, I mean, book knowledge is good, but Will is sort of twisting it as a defense mechanism, right? And so in the speech, Sean starts breaking it down in this just very articulate and specific way. Like he's going head on to like, this is the kind of knowledge that you're lacking right now in your life because you're not being vulnerable and you're not allowing people to break through these walls, right? So it's like, what's love? Love isn't just one night stands. It's being with a woman who makes you truly happy. I felt like that line could have been written better, but you get what he's getting at, right? I really like the one with art, where it's not just the history or the content of the art, but its experience of it, ending up somehow in the Sistine Chapel and smelling it and bending your neck upwards and getting dizzy underneath it like the start. That would have been a better line. I should have been writing the dialogue for this, but I was ending the Cold War. So that's why and the other counselors, of course, like they weren't able to break through for Will because they were just book smarts, right? Will was just able to
outbook them.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man. So that's why that leads me to that thought.
I think the whole idea of book knowledge versus experience, I don't know. To me, that was what probably from the whole speech jumped out to. I mean, yeah, it's the sense. I mean, it is what the speech is about. But I think that made me think the most, and I think that's one thing that I maybe have shifted the last 5 to 10 years. Like, not that I value the experience more. That's not what I'm trying to say. But I feel like it just draws you more deeply into life, tangible things we can see, smell, taste, touch. Hear, if you want to, all the senses to get involved, I guess. But I think that, and even like the whole idea of outsmarting somebody, and like I like that he called him like a cocky, scared little kid or whatever he called him, because I think that was probably me for a while. Like I wanted to learn as much information as I could because I thought that would make me smart. I could be smarter than somebody else. When I think of moments that I really appreciate in my life that have produced joy or, this gratitude or something that lasts outside of the moment itself, it's always these kind of experiential things that just draw you more deeply into, that reality, whatever. I think one area that that jumps out to me when I first think about it is just being married to somebody. Anything I say now, I feel like I would have said the same things 10 years ago, about what does it take to be a good husband, or what does it take to be a good father? How I would have said those things 10 years ago would have been in a very romanticized way. I'm going to sacrifice my wife and be willing to stay up late and help with the baby and just like all these things that, I think we would all agree like a good guy should do, but just having like lived through some of that and having to actually, be in the trenches, if you will, I think it just makes you appreciate it that much more, I guess. And then I think that, so it's not that I have like new book knowledge, but it just like makes the book knowledge sink in so much it's like into your bones, it's not just in your head anymore.
What you just gave as a description of fatherhood and being a good husband through fatherhood. I've really never been exposed to a book on that.
Mm-hmm.
It's called the Bible, Landon. Maybe open it.
Remember, keep studying.
That's fair. That's fair. But
well, I don't know.
Fine.
I mean, you
fine.
could say things like Art of Manliness, Wild at Heart. I mean, those are books about being a dad.
Yeah.
I guess it's knowing it at the cognitive level versus having lived through it just changes how you think about it. I shouldn't even say it doesn't change how you think about it. It just changes
which maybe is why like I feel like there's no book on it because like I've lived it. I don't feel like I've read or been prepared fully for it. Now having experienced some of it, given
I don't think that you're being as fair with yourself as you ought to be because I mean I don't know if you've read Wild at Heart, but you've read other books.
I've read Wild.
You did, okay.
I've read the Bible,
and you've obviously read Art of Manliness, right?
Art.
So
right,
it's like all of those things, all of that content that you consume. How I think about it in this sort of like meta way is like those are things that create the expectations within yourself. They create the expectations for your soul, if you will. And if you're not reading those things before it really hits the fan, when you have to wake up in the middle of the night, you're not going to do it because it's like, well, who cares? I mean, people usually aren't going to be that dismissive. They'll put up like some fight, but they're going to give up a lot more easily versus in our minds, but you guys, because you're actually in it, it's like, no, I can't fail. And this is going to sound silly, but I think it's a lot to this because I can't let Brett McKay down or John Eldridge down or all of these ghosts, if you will, in our soul that we want to live up to.
Analyzing this book versus experience, part of the scene, like seeing Sean Robbins' library, like, Matt Will was impressed, like, oh, I've read those books, oh, interesting books, etc. Like, does it make you want to like, oh, I need to read more books or I need to experience more of life? Which way do you fall there?
Well, I think it just varies. Obviously, Will didn't need the books. He needed the nature of life and to be bold and vulnerable, like communicated to him, right? Mm-hmm. To be witnessed. For other people, it's like, they do need the books. They do need to believe that there is more than the five senses, right? That the senses have a sacramental nature to them, right? Which is sort of where the books come from.
Be able to enter as deeply into the experience if I didn't understand it to some level, the importance of it. Part of why it's, I don't want to say easier to do the hard things, to really, especially like the things that maybe involve some suffering, which we can get to, but, to run with our example of being married and having kids, like really entering fully into that experience, even the joys of it and the awesome parts, but also the really hard parts. Like if you don't understand why it's as important as it is, why it has literally, eternal consequences for all of us involved, I don't think you will approach it the same way. And I think that you'll kind of withdraw. You won't enter in. And I think that's why you get people why people view it as this boring domestic thing that they, have to put up with. We didn't talk about it in the outline, but I feel like it's worth mentioning just what social media and the internet does to that. And I think from two standpoints, and the first one I'll say first because it's more of a soapbox, but the second one I'll say because I think it's better for discussion. But there's this Facebook thing, which I'm not looking at Facebook right now, which is probably good, but that it's called I Fucking Love Science. And people put it and they post it And like, I shouldn't get upset about it. I should be like Robin Williams and see that these people are probably hurting somewhere and blah, blah, blah. But like, if people like it, I'm sorry. But the people that I see posted, it's just like so obvious that they're trying to be condescending to other people. And it's like, you're just posting a picture of something that someone else figured out that you found mildly interesting. That's all that just happened. Talk about stuck in the book knowledge only realm, they just don't have the intellect that Matt Damon's character does. But I think a better kind of way to talk about though is just this idea of kind of living more virtually. And I feel like how that, I would have to think just detracts from a full experience.
Books versus experiences. One trend that I've noticed from a few writers or pseudo modern day philosophers that I follow and have followed the last 5 to 10 years is they're actually coming around to like whatever their mid-20s. It was like, read as many of the best books, check them off. Oh, I'm trying to read 50, 60 books this year, maybe 100, and like take notes, and I can do several thousand books in a lifetime. And then even like there's a famous video, Carl Sagan, who did kind of the Neil deGrasse Tyson of the 1970s and 80s. He was in a...
Well, in fairness to Carl Sagan, Neil deGrasse Tyson did the Carl Sagan.
Fair. Yeah. But
okay.
Same character. There's a bit of a viral video of him in a big library, and he's like, even the smartest person, like if they're actually taking in the knowledge, like call it 1,000 or 2,000 books, and he walks down like 3 or 4 shelves of a library, and he was like, this is all they're going to be able to read in their lifetime. Like for you or whatever, whoever you are, like figure out what your specialty, calling, will is, and like you've got to like be conscientious of the way that you spend your time reading books. Like don't read the hottest thing off the shelf, like commit to something to chip away at. Back to my modern readers, like they're even like just as I mentioned, I prefer to watch movies 4, 5, 6 times and then like catch the new thing. I've noticed like even some of these guys all throughout, David Perell, you can look him up, is just like read the same 1, 2, 3, 5 books, maybe 5 writers, and like know everything about them, about it. It's better to like ponder deeply the best works than to try to like carry the breadth of everything. And so personally, that's kind of how I've thought about my own reading and books and pursuit of knowledge recently. I think with like just quickly offhand with social media is like books or experiences, so much of what we're inundated with and presented to consume is like neither. It's like not real knowledge. It's not art or science or source material, and it is all just like a distraction. And you just even now have to like so conscientiously choose to pursue experiences or actual reading in it.
I think the most relevant connection with the film, Will makes a reference to the books on Sean's shelf in something to the effect of like, did you actually read them, or are they just there to make you look smart? He didn't use those words, but it was something to that effect, right? And I think that the books on the shelf to make you look smart, I know people still do that to some extent, but that was...
I have lots of books on my shelf just to look smart.
Guilty.
Shame on you, Landon. He has his hand up. I think that was the great looking Instagram post with science fucking awesome and, free Palestine.
Infinite Jest. Oh yeah, I've read Infinite Jest. Look, it's right there on my shelf.
And the free Palestine banner on your Facebook profile and all these things. But the point is that like it was difficult to brand yourself before social media.
Oh yeah.
And like what even is a brand? Like if you were just to dial into evolution, just raw nuts and bolts humanity, like what's the analog version of brand? It's not obvious to me. But that's what social media allows, which, like Landon said, is an utter distraction from both, like book and experience knowledge, which we're agreeing, like you definitely need both. Will needed more experience knowledge, and other people need more book knowledge. And like the branding just takes you away from both of those.
I do admit, like,
So
whether friends, family, maybe you. I will, if I go into somebody's house and like, I'll act like Will staring at their bookshelf for a bit just to like be, they've got their books out, they're displaying them, see if they've read them, kind of throw a few jabs and it is, I don't know, it's a prior generations way to like say who they are, and I think it's an important lost art to confront them on it.
I'm not crapping on it completely. It's nice, it's fun to look at books.
Yeah, but to like call out whoever's house you're in, like maybe you even don't even know the host that well, but yeah, pick something off the shelf and
you can keep your books, Landon. Okay?
No, I'm just saying it's a lost art that I think we should carry on.
Right. And I think we'd all agree, like, there's a difference between like having books in your home where people may or may not come versus like publicly portraying it, on some internet forum where, in order.
This doesn't have to do with social
media. Yeah. One thing that I think is worth talking about when we say experiences, because as we've been talking, it's like, I think it ties into risk taking, which I think was in the outline quite a bit, but I think people can hear this, and I think we talked about it a long time ago. This might have been pre-actual aired podcast age, but the man in the arena, and I think we talked about how...
I think that was our first ever podcast.
Stuck with me.
Technically, in that McDonald's parking lot for me.
But we talked, I think, Landon, you mentioned how like a lot of people use that as an argument for like doing these tech startups and things like that. But that was like years ago, so maybe things have changed. But I think to the same idea or the same feeling, people can hear, or even we can hear, this idea of experience and picture very grand things. So there's a flavor of I'm not going to, settle for this boring life. I want to experience everything, and I want to travel, and I don't want to settle down yet. And I don't know if you guys get what I'm going here at all, and even though I think that can be part of experience, so I'm not trying to say that's bad necessarily. I think a big lost point of that is just when we say experience, like, and so that's why I like how Sean, what he talks about aren't these grand, really on their face. I mean, I guess in a way romantic, but they're not these grand special things, right? Holding your wife's hand as she dies of cancer. I guess going to Sistine Chapel is pretty grand, but having your friend die in your lap during war. But I think a good example of it was when he talks about how Matt Damon's character, that is, his wife farted in her sleep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which I think was kind of like a chuckle moment, but I think it shows that when we talk about experience, it's not just these huge grand things. It can be these very seemingly simple, just ordinary basic things, but entered into fully, those are the experiences that help probably teach us the most about life.
I thought you were going to go a slightly different direction with that. Maybe part of this is because this was brought up on the outline. I thought you were going to say, like, how is the element of risk considered as an important aspect of life experience, as something to be learned from? Right? Because one could delude themselves to some extent that you're experiencing life simply because you're paragliding in Belize or something like that on a regular basis, which is fun. And like you're saying, it's not saying you can't do those things, but it is important to consider what ways can I live dangerously, in a sense, because those are the things that Sean is touching on in this speech, like ways to live dangerously and with risk that he's challenging Will to consider.
When we're talking experience, just I think risk is a necessary component, whether it be, this, I don't want to say superficial because you could die hang gliding in Belize, but you risk something. Yeah, we can jump with that in all we want.
Yeah, I liked, and I'll give Matt credit, even though I said I was going to take credit from this. He says there's a connection here between suffering, or between risk and suffering. Risk implies the willingness to suffer. I thought that was a striking thing to observe and seemed accurate. And maybe we can distill something there on the people of modernity.
Why did you specifically say from people of modernity with that?
Do we in modern and modern
I might
day,
not have
do we take as many risks as we should? What ways do we tend to avoid risk? Are there ways that back in the day they actually maybe took less risks than we do now in certain ways? And what do you guys think of that connection between Matt saying there between risk and suffering?
Top of mind right off the bat, I do think we are faced with less risk. Like looking at the 18, 19-year-old in society, especially, I feel like many of the public data charts I've seen, like teens, especially maybe a generation behind us, like do less drugs, less confronted with things of adulthood, and kind of just delay that because they're all looking at their phones all the time. We don't have to fight in wars. Time to marriage has generally on average dropped back many years since the prior one or two generations. Taking a leap of faith, or our parents got married at age 22 or getting married at age 30, 32, feeling the need to like have everything secured, like a safe job, a bunch of savings in the bank before taking a risk in, committing to something lifelong without optionality is where we're probably taking fewer risks.
Yeah, I think just our whole modern climate-controlled 72-degree, everything is super comfortable, seems to be very averse to risk-taking. It seems like kind of an adolescent mindset to like want risk for the sake of risk. I feel like as an adult, you have to. So we'll to riff off Matt's point, I do agree. I think risk implies the willingness to suffer because you have to leave yourself open to that possibility, right? Because a risk kind of implies that something bad could happen. When we're teenagers, risk for the sake of risk seems cool. So I'm picturing kids driving their cars really fast, doing drugs because their parents told them not to, drinking beers because their parents told them not to, whatever, insert high school movie you want to talk about. But I think as an adult, you have to, eventually any sort of commitment you're ever going to make has to have some sort of risk attached to it. And I've used my analogy before, I feel like, on this podcast and elsewhere about how I feel like when, proposing to Julie in some ways is like jumping off a cliff. Like it's one of the biggest risks you'll ever take. Does anybody have a thought of a risk that doesn't? So we've talked about marriage a lot, but like, does anybody have thoughts like what else? What other, I guess, positive risks are there?
I mean, what are you looking for? Things like new jobs
I
or
feel like jobs
new
is second.
religions?
Yeah.
It's kind of and not just book knowledge. Give us an experience here. What have we done here?
I mean, I think that something relevant to what we're saying here, coming from the other direction, and of course, the elephant in the room, of course, is Mike, who's 35 and not married, just commenting on the reality of lack of risk taking, at least from the standpoint of marriage or long-term relationships. Coming at it from the other angle, we are obviously well aware of people like helicopter parents. There's a friend of mine, he was talking about how his well, I won't say this. Yeah, I mean, we're obviously very protected from any sort of harm. Harm is of course in quotes, because how much actual harm even is there? But yeah, I'm trying to think of any other example. Drinking bottled water constantly, stuff like that. But I guess what I'm trying to say is like, could even simply the proverbial helicopter parent who's not saying anything about risk to a child, but just simply protecting them tremendously from any discomfort, does that in a way train them in not taking risks? Right? It's not directly linked to not taking risks, but it does make you fearful of discomfort, which it doesn't take too much brain activity to consider a risk and then realize, oh, this might be uncomfortable.
Hey, don't beat yourself up. Lincoln didn't get married till 33.
Damn it. I thought he was older than that.
No, 33.
But that's like 50.
Life expectancy for them, for males in 1842 was about 45. So.
And with how many miles you can run, you're going to live to at least 150.
You thought he was just.
I think the parenting thing, this is not in the outline, but just interesting. I think I could do a better job at that, because to kind of, I guess, challenge myself based on everything I've said so far. Like I kind of earlier kind of broke down. It's not just the grand experiences. It's kind of those simple everyday things that are, real life. I think sometimes I struggle, like I flip it with my kids. Like I try to give them these big experiences where they can take a risk or be uncomfortable. But like everyday life, I think I don't do that well enough.
Well, what are some examples of ways?
So like on the grand experience, like are these big things like I feel like I try to rely on these big moments. So like last weekend we had our Cub Scout camp out. It was cold outside. It was like the lowest 34 degrees. So me and Thomas and Benjamin slept outside the tent. To most people, I feel like sleeping outside in 34-degree weather sounds pretty crazy. And yeah, so Benjamin is 3 and he's now done it. So like I have that, but I feel like sometimes in the day to day, I can't think of just to try to collectively talk about it, don't climb too high on the jungle gym, or, you scraped your knee, let's get the Neosporin and the Band-Aid. And not that those are bad things to say at all, but I feel like I probably err on the side of slightly overprotective on those type of things. And then I kind of get these grand images in my mind of, these 34-degree, these cold weather campouts or something. But I feel like those day-to-day things probably have just as much impact on them.
Well, in fairness to you, the 34-degree camping, there are very few parents, I feel like, who would do that with a child, let alone a 3-year-old, which is great because you recognize, like, you just bring plenty of blankets and you'll be perfectly fine and they're going to have a great time.
Yeah. Oddly enough, over half of the people camped inside the church.
But it's like, I don't know. I think you're being too hard on yourself with the jungle gym and putting Neosporin on things. Like, well, infections are real risks. And falling off and breaking your neck is a real. But, if the risk is, maybe, so are they really ready to take off their training wheels on their bike? Like, maybe not, but you know what? He or she really wants to do it, and I think there's an opportunity to learn consequences here. They're not going to die. I mean, almost impossible they're going to die. But is there a real risk they might sprain a wrist or something like that? Like, I don't know. I think that's sort of like the more middling appropriate sort of routes, to consider there.
I say this jokingly.
I
say this as a joke, but so the unmarried guy uses the argument, well, they're not gonna die. It's like, try telling that to my wife, okay?
Well, that's why, men and women balance each other out, but.
Couple thoughts. I do think, looking at the text, looking at the series of speeches that we're analyzing, the biggest risks are probably for a man, perhaps looking at the Good Will Hunting narrative in light of what is positive or toxic masculinity. The biggest risk for a man is being vulnerable enough for the relational, marital risk, leap of faith discussion, because he does not figure that out until the very last scene. That is the last thing he was able to do. It took all of therapy, it took all of the routing, and it wasn't until cut away that he's finally going to get her to go see about a woman. So, do you think that's number one? The second reason I think that is because I think my favorite scene or speech in this movie is the construction parking lot scene between Ben and Matt, or Will and whatever Ben's character's name is. I think that even the first time I watched this movie, and today, I'm still very conflicted by the message. And the
maybe, hey, why don't we pause and take a listen to that?
All right, we'll take a listen.
Bonus speech.
Double speeches.
So how's your lady? She's gone. Gone where? Medical school in California. Really? Yeah. When was this? It's like a week ago. Well, that sucks. So, when are you done with those meetings? I think the week after I'm 21. Yeah, they gonna hook you up with a job or what? Yeah. Sit in a room and do long division for the next 50 years. Probably make some nice bank, though. Elaborate. Better than way out of here. I want to way out of here for. I mean, I'm gonna live here the rest of my life. Be neighbors. We'll have a little kid. Take them a little league together up Foley Field. Look, you're my best friend, so don't take this the wrong way. In 20 years, if you're still living here, coming over my house, watch the Patriots game, you're still working construction, and kill you. That's not a threat. What? That's a fact. I'll kill you. What are you talking about? Look, you got something none of us. Oh, come on. Why is it always this? I mean, I owe it to myself to do this. That. What if I don't want to? No. You don't owe it to yourself. You owe it to me. Because tomorrow I'm going to wake up and I'll be 50. And I'll still be doing it. And that's all right. That's fine. I mean, you're sitting on a winning lottery ticket. You're too much of a cash it in. And that's bull. Because I'd do anything to have what you got. So would any good guys. It'd be an insult to us if you're still here in 20 years. Hanging around here is a waste of your time. You don't know that. I don't? No, you don't know that. Oh, I don't know that. Let me tell you what I do. Every day I come by your house and I pick you up. We go out, we have a few drinks and a few laughs, and it's great. You know what the best part of my day is? It's for about 10 seconds from when I pull up to the curb and when I get to your door. Because I think maybe I'll get up there and I'll knock on the door and you won't be there. No goodbye, no see you later, no nothing. You just left. I don't know much, but I know that.
I am conflicted by this speech, and this is the job speech. So I just said marriage is number one for a guy. Matt didn't figure out the last scene. That's our proof in this text. Second is job, career. Where are you willing to take a risk? It's even my favorite, the Gospel of Jordan Peterson, original lecture series, lecture 2. Abraham finally leaves his father and he sets out to found the nations. He's the only one who follows and walks with God, and he leaves and he goes west, young man, right, to Egypt. He doesn't know what he's doing. But he does leave and try to become something for himself, which is like the thesis of the West, secular and religious, perhaps. That scene that we just listened to, the construction scene, is a version of that. And perhaps Ben is right. Like, go west, Matt, leave. You need to grow up, use your talents, forget about me, never talk to me again. I don't know. You contrast that with like community, like people are more important than the chase for career and like relationships, and perhaps like add in some like a spice of Windleberry, like being in a place and knowing a place, and being with people who are, of different intelligent capacities is a form of diversity, perhaps. And there's a lot he can offer to where he is from. So I disagree perhaps with some parts of that scene, and I don't know, feel conflicted by it. I think it's a very interesting dialogue that describes a lot of Western psychology that is hard to sometimes square up with Christian theology.
How did that connect with our previous thing?
So one taking a risk.
Yeah.
First, I believe is marriage and relationship. 2 is job and career. And my question would be like, maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't. Like, it's not I don't think it's as morally, or I don't think the job risk is as important as this scene makes it out to be, as perhaps even Western canon makes it out to be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too put off by that scene. There's certainly a spectrum, I'd say. I mean, it's in the past I would have said differently. I don't think that one is morally required, compelled to like stay friends like we've stayed friends. I think there is a moral compulsion for some connection. If you were actually friends with them, like something once a year, once every few years, somewhere in there. So yeah, I would just say that. I mean, a little bit of a spectrum there, but yeah, he's obviously not embraced Sean or
no. I need black and white. Either they stay in Boston and do T-ball together and are neighbors, or they never talk to each other again. Like, which one is the right answer here?
He found Facebook and he contacted him. This is Will. You remember me?
I feel like, so you said job was 2. To me, I would put where you live and like leaving a place.
And I think they're a little bit,
they're similar.
Yeah.
Because so I'm thinking about, so to try to kind of get as like big picture as possible, like you can contrast in the Bible, like honor your father and mother and, leave them and be joined to your wife. So there does seem to be almost like I'm not saying there actually is when lived well, but I feel like you could say that there's a feeling of like a tension there. Like, well, which one am I supposed to do? Because in a lot of times it seems like they would be kind of I have to pick one or the other. And I think that's actually an interesting thing because I feel like, and maybe this is just like different cultures will value different things, but the whole like leaving home seems like a very hard thing to do. So like when you were talking about Abraham, I started thinking about, I mean, I only live 28 minutes from the house I grew up in. So like, I started like second guessing myself in a way.
It's closer than that. He's one conference team over. It's closer than 20 minutes.
Same newspaper is going to write about us. But like in all like seriousness, like I feel like I started even thinking about like, oh, did I take the safe route? Did I not take the risk to move away from home and, make my own place? But then I contrast that with like, how much we would, It's a Wonderful Life, like George Bailey. Like, well, he lived in the same town he grew up in, took over his father's business, and we would all view that as like a really good life. So that's just like, I feel like that's kind of a fun little mind game to play with on which side to fall on. I did think Matt Damon was a little harsh, like,
but
the best 10 minutes of my day or when I think you might not be there. It's like, I don't know.
Does Ben Affleck.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Ben Affleck said that's Matt Damon. But
yeah, he should want Matt to do more than a construction job, right?
To make it more interesting.
But I'm exaggerating some parts here as he said, like, I never want to see you again if that means that you pursued the fullest of your talents versus not, which I think is a microscopic view of the dichotomy of the two options here. But in the least, that's my favorite scene and one that made me ponder the most of the trade-offs of risks and life choices.
So in the movie, I mean, when he goes west, go west, young man, like he's obviously chasing the girl. I feel like, and that specific, I mean, it's a fictional movie, but like if you're that much of a math genius, like, I mean, you're going to have a job. Right. It's not like you're giving up.
Right.
I'm not going to work at MIT. I can work at Stanford, though. So, like, woohoo. Have you guys ever felt like you've had to do something? I mean, what risks have you taken or what, and not, or not taken? You know what I mean? Like, at what junctures did you kind of have sort of these difficult decisions where you had to play these, factor in all these things we're talking about?
It's not as if all risks are created equally, at least in our own minds, right? I remember hearing, I think it was on Joe Rogan at one point, this anecdote of some, stud boxer or something who had to call a buddy of his to stand up to this guy who's trying to scam him at his house, who's trying to sell him something. Right. And obviously this boxer could have kicked this scam guy's butt unfazed. Right. But like this boxer just had never learned how to challenge himself and sort of navigate that uncertainty of standing up to someone who's trying to lie to you or swindle you. So I sort of set that up as a prologue to what I'm going to share. It's like, yeah, in certain ways, I think that taking risks, sort of wading out into the unknown comes fairly, easily is not the right word, because even for this like boxer, like it's not easy to go in the ring and, kick someone's butt or vice versa. And so with like things in my life, there's certain risks or challenges or uncertainties which come more naturally, I would say. it's, with things that we talked about with long distance running or cycling 300 miles or 1,000 miles. I know Ross wants to talk about romance. It's like it's relatively easy for me to just ask a random girl on a date. I mean, I could fill a book about stories like that. My cousin.
You were shaking in your boots after Landon's wedding, though, asking that girl on a date. Fountain tears.
But I got her number.
He did get her number, though.
Yeah, my cousin Josh, not the one who introduced this episode, he said that my love life could be an episode of Modern Love or a whole season, maybe. Yeah, that comes like fairly easily to me. But in fairness, but on the other side of it, that trying to stick with the click words from the speech. It's like with me, a risk asking a girl on a date. It's like, whatever, she turns me down. Like, mostly the harm is on me. Like, I'm not going to hurt her, right? And I would say that the longer I'm in a relationship, obviously emotions become more complicated, of concerns of hurting another person, hurting yourself because, oh boy, no, my life would have been better if I'd stayed with her, or not staying with her. Of course, there are actual factors that one is dealing with too. It's not just all in your head. It's like, yeah, where do I necessarily fall on that spectrum of navigating that sense of risk in relationships? I don't know. I mean, I'll sort of repeat something vaguely of where it feels like I've been at that edge, if you will, with a couple of girls, a few girls, where it's like, man, really wish that would have worked out. There's nothing like inherently scary to me about marriage, right? But it's with these other girls where it's like, man, I don't know if I could do a whole life like that. I think that's appropriately vague, but factual at the same time. So that's my experience. How much that tracks with other people's, I don't know. Honestly, I don't feel like that tracks super closely to other people's experience of risk and commitment in relationships, but I'm open to being proved wrong.
Yeah, bringing it down one level to the personal. I went to see about a girl in Chicago and went to the north side of Illinois. I didn't cross state lines, but
turning on filter to Christian Mingle.
I think there is. I think that I'd probably, somewhere in our notes we said that the review of Good Will Hunting was like, it's so predictable, and he did go west. He did go see about the girl. He did pursue the fulfillment of his potential. And I think that is both the cultural current we swim in, that is both Western and Christian, both. I think it is the Abraham story. Leave your father's house and like see where God is taking you. As well as perhaps just the more like go succeed and achieve, and I think those are both true, having still an interest in just that scene with Ben being off and me questioning if that's true for everybody. Like, had he stayed, that would have been a less predictable story. But I think you can make enough arguments that it would be equally as admirable. But you'd only have to use, I think you'd have to only use Christian themes to make that as equally as admirable and less capitalistic pursuit of greatness themes.
I think really quickly, I don't think you'd necessarily have to use explicitly Christian themes, but in order to know if the movie had a happy ending, you would have to see what happened over the next 60 years.
Fair. Okay. That's fair. Yeah. All right. Sure.
I mean, my last thought on the risk thing, I feel like the risk, even when we talk about all of them, is just commitment. So, like, you just risk it not being what you wanted it to be. But if you're committed, there's not really a way out, if that makes sense. So, like, with romance, like, there's a risk that, she doesn't make me as happy as I thought she would, or she looks different than she used to, or, this isn't as exciting as it used to be. But there's not, like, I think Matt had put, or we put in, like, the discussion points. Like, in some ways, marriage is the most risky thing you can possibly do. And then unless, divorce is just super commonplace and normal and not a problem. Because if you don't like it, you just get out of it. So it's not risky in that sense. So I feel like it's more this idea of a commitment you have to make that's risky, whether that be this person I'm committing myself to for the rest of my life, this job, this place of living, like whatever it may be.
Final bell.
Final bell.
All your strength, all your power, all your love.
It's 15. One more round. There's no stopping this now. This is our round. Don't stop it now. Just start me, don't stop. All your strength, all your power, all your love, everything you've got. This is all light to you and young.
And we're back. We've been sitting on this park bench with Sean and Will for way too long. Sun's getting real low and the ducks have eaten all of our bread. Ross, what do we got for the final bell here?
All right, so we've talked about Matt and Ben a lot. We've talked about experience instead of our book knowledge. We've talked about risks with vulnerability. What are we supposed to do to be successful? All this stuff. What is something that you had to learn by experience? Or something that you thought you knew, but experience somehow changed your perspective or how you looked at it?
So since I am of the three who had the most inclination for something on this one, I'll lead the way. Maybe something will strike them as I go. Something, and I've sort of commented on this before in similar ways, but I don't know, maybe this will land in a more compelling way for someone on their drive right now. Something in the arena of faith here would be my answer. Me and Ross, we're around the Newman Center Catholic community. Landon his own Christian communities to be a part of in college. Right. And as one should be, one can become very fired up by that environment, all these new great things you're learning about your faith and great people you're around and et cetera, et cetera. And like that's, call that book knowledge in a sense. But everyone has to go about this in a different way. One does have to reckon themselves with certain hard questions, right? In all, I've talked about this with my mom recently. For some reason, when I was in college, it didn't bother me as much. I don't know why, but the Catholic priest sexual abuse scandal, like, it bothers me now a lot more than it did then. Yeah, and I'll just, without dwelling on it too long, all I'll say else on is it's less that it happened. I mean, obviously it's tragic it happened, but the fact that it was covered up so frequently. Yeah, dealing with that as a hard question. And then, as I've shared before, watching my grandpa degrade, slow down with his dementia. Yeah, and just considering, as I've said before, but it's a very, I think, useful and apt analogy. There's something that is more coherent, spiritually coherent about suffering to your death with cancer. Because generally speaking, I know it's not all the time. You can still sort of lose your mind at certain points of suffering from cancer. But at the same time, yeah, your mind and your will is there, and you can potentially repent of whatever things you might have done or something, right? But with dementia, if you're presumably losing that nimbleness with your mind and your will. So where's your capacity to repent, right, through that? And it's over the course of years. It's not like it is over the course of just a few hours. Yeah, dealing with those two things, because, I mean, not to build myself up, but those are like reasonable things that a lot of people do. Like, I'm sure there are a lot of people who have those two big things on their minds, and it's like, I'm not screwing around with Christianity or even more draconian Catholicism's flavor. But there's two things that life experience sort of coalesced for me from those two experiences. And one is having to do with the dementia experience is tied to something from John chapter 6, where Jesus gives his Eucharistic discourse and turns to Peter and asks, are you going to leave me too? And Peter says, to whom else shall we go? Right. And, there was something that was absurd about the Eucharistic discourse, right? That's why everyone left, because they're like, this is crazy. This doesn't make sense. And that's like the dementia for me. It doesn't make sense. It's absurd, is in a certain sense. And Peter, in rather being in this sort of goofy, sort of zealous way, like, well, Jesus, he doesn't like give Jesus a great Christian meme back at him, right? It's this very material and deep recall of their friendships. Like, well, to whom else shall we go? Like, you are the only thing that speaks the words that have anything to do with eternal life, right? Something about that make a lot of sense for me. I heard that gospel reading like probably a few weeks before something very significant happened with my grandpa. And that's why I got this tattoo, to sort of etch that realization in my mind and heart. The other thing with the priest, and this is actually sort of just recently, but realizing that it really comes down to one thing. Did Jesus rise from the dead or not? Like, that's it. It's still inexplicable how, priests could have abused children this way, or how it could have been covered up. But that's the thing. That's the only question that really needs to be answered. So those are things that life taught me, or sort of shaped what I learned in books.
I'll go next. I've got a thing or two. As far as what have I learned from experience. And I think it's the first thing that comes to my mind is just how much I can learn from other people. And I know it sounds like an obvious thing, but like when I think of how I learned it from experience, I think at some point I thought certain people could teach me things, if that makes sense. So, these people that have read these books, or my mom and dad, or these people that, are living well, these values that I say I should live out, all blah, blah. But I think that as I've gotten to know more people, not that I would say that, there are certain people that I think I could learn more from, but just this idea that people are generally good and people are generally pretty smart. And I know, like, I just feel like everything right now is there's a temptation to, put people in some sort of a group and you kind of pick if you can learn from them or not, whether that's they're Christian or not, or they're Republican or Democrat, or, you just take it from there. And I think of the example that like pops into my head first, like when I kind of think of this idea, was our friend Joe, when we were living in, me and Matt, who's not obviously on the podcast tonight, but when we were living in our apartment in graduate school, there's me and Matt, who are these, supposedly devout Catholic guys, and our friend Joe, who's not. And I still remember it so distinctly, and I bet he has forgotten it completely, but it was super hot outside one day, and we're probably like playing Super Smash Brothers or something stupid like that. And I can like picture it. He was like, "Do you guys want this cup?" And we're like, "No." Like, it's a plastic cup. It probably said Bradley Braves, and it was free at one of our whatever events. And he left then. And like, he went and he took water to the dude that was getting paid to mow the lawn of like our apartment complex. He just took him a cup of water. And I just remember thinking like, and I don't know, it sounds super simple, I guess, but like it struck me so much that, I feel like I learned more about caring for the needy from that instance than from insert whatever book I'd read about caring for the needy, if that makes sense. And that was the first one. And I think the other thing, and honestly, I did not think of this until Mike shared his story, but I feel like it's worth sharing, just this idea of death in general. So I was very close to my grandma when she passed away, pretty much because she died in a hospital during COVID. So no one was allowed to visit. Even her like last hours comfort care, 2 of her 4 children were allowed to visit for 3 hours. And that was it. And then they had to leave. So like they weren't allowed to stay till the very end. And her other 2 children weren't allowed to get in, which just awful. But in the week leading up to that, I worked in the hospital. So I was really my cousin did too. So like we're really the only people that I got to be around her. And I feel like, I don't know, it's hard to even put it into words, but I feel like just the idea of death became much more real and tangible to me because I actually had to see it like happening. And in some ways, like I felt like I kind of had to take on the role of the family member who was there because my other family members literally weren't allowed to be. But to tie it into the question of, what has the experience taught me? And I don't even know if I have like the right words to say like what it taught me, but just I feel like I learned more about just death in that week. Just seeing someone die, this process of death that there's no other, like I could not have learned, like you can't learn that without seeing it happen firsthand.
At the start, I was like, oh, I'm going to choose a job or a marriage story. Hearing you both talk, I feel like maybe I've hit those 2. And speaking about what we've learned, learned from our faith between book knowledge and experiences. My head just got to thinking about I think having lived through marriage and job experiences and grappling with what our faith means in a modern world and how to understand the word, the Bible, and the junctures which we choose, left or right or straight. I think that just having had the ability to walk almost 35 years on this earth, I think the appreciation of living that and understanding the value of the stories in the Bible and the gospel and what what Christ directs us to, turn our hearts to is something that I felt like I knew at 14 or 15 as book knowledge, but having experienced a couple more decades, it's like even more unknown and mysterious, and just a thirst to pursue. And I felt like that's changed a lot and has been a refreshing thing. Yeah.
All right. So let's see. It's either Matt or Landon. Matt's not here. Landon, do you have anything? Where are we going next?
Definitely done research. Don't have anything to call today. So stay tuned for another Oscar-nominated movie and a great speech within it.
Yes. Thanks for drinking.
And thinking.
With us.
Hey, be safe out there, will ya? Talk to y'all later. Cue the music.
Dead ends come and go. Look toward the horizon. Up ahead you'll find a peace of mind, relief from the trying. I have burned a bridge, wrecked in a ditch, had to ask forgiveness. Dead ends come and go. Look toward the horizon. Oh, there are stories to tell. The times we grew and the times we fell. Oh, I've been afraid some days, but the road will lead us to a better place. The road will lead us to a better place.
This is
Recording
Thursday.
now.
It is Thursday. Recording.
And
now.
Mike has a story about his first flat tire. So
The Honda years, chapter 17.
I get a little something. I get a little something in my tire and pull into the Freemason parking lot as previously described. And I've got one of these stupid jacks that Honda makes that is just like the goofiest little thing. I'm jacking around with this thing, no pun intended. And I can't get this handle to turn because it's one of those things where it's like the what the heck is the thing called that turns the lug nuts?
Wrench.
The lug wrench. Lug wrench. And I can't get the thing to turn completely because I have it in such a position that it's just hitting the asphalt before it can even turn a full revolution or anything. So anyway, I jog it around. I get into a spot where it works, blah, blah, blah. I get the tire off and I get the spare tire on and my spare tire is flat. So I go on down to some other houses. Luckily, I was just in town here, so I knocked on a few doors. No one answered. Then I see a girl who is staring at me down the street. And so I run down the sidewalk, down Main Street, carrying my tire. And I say, hey. And I'm like, hey, sorry, Mike, I got a flat tire. And she's like, yeah, some kids have been smoking weed there this week. That's why I was watching you. And so I said, well, do you have a pump in your garage or something? He's like, no. Well, what if I give you a few bucks and you go down to Phillips 66 and fill up my tire? And she's like, she hesitated. I was like, well, or I could go with you. And she's like, okay, which was sort of surprising. Like random man I just met 30 seconds ago.
Was she dialing 911 like in her phone behind her back at this moment?
So we exchange names, Megan and Mike, and drive down to Phillips, get my tire filled up. And I ask if I can get her anything. She says a Red Bull. And so I get her 2 and I say, you're not going to drink these tonight, are you? And she says, nope, I have to wake up at 4:30 tomorrow for work. I was like, oh, okay. So then we just talk about what she studied, what she did. And it was just a very pleasant exchange. And I sent her on her way. I didn't even suggest the speech, guys. Because I considered it, but